time of reflection or meditation to say, not just who am I and not just what was I made for, but what is it I'm called to do today?
Welcome to the Meaningful Jobs podcast season 2. I'm your host Adrian, and today we are extremely honored to welcome Tom into the podcast. How are you, Tom?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Can you first of all maybe talk us through your background and what you're doing now?
Sure. So background has kind of been all over the map. After university, I'm American. I spent 12 years in the U.S. Marines as an officer. Got out, went into corporate world, became a partner with Ernst & Young Consulting, ran my own company for about 12 years, and I'm now the co-CEO of the Halftime Institute in Dallas.
That's quite a big change from a Marine to the corporate world, to your own business. Because I've heard a lot of stories about Marines or armies or vets who struggle to actually get into society after their work. So could you tell us how you manage such a smooth, I don't know if it's a smooth transition, but at least you made it in the end.
That's right. Well, it's a continual transition. I mean, I'm old enough now to look back more than I look forward, and I can see just kind of a path of continual sort of refinement on who I am and being able to do what I feel called or made to do, right? And so now I'm as excited as I've ever been every day when I wake up, what I get to do, and it kind of had the same feeling in most of my career paths, but just more and more figuring out who I am, what I feel like, again, I was created to do, and then coming into a place that allowed me to play to that more and more. So it was really sort of an evolution. It's definitely had its ups and downs, but it's continued to be on a good trajectory.
So how did you get into the Marines in the first place?
So my dad had been a career Air Force officer, and I was at university. So I was familiar with the military. I was at university. I was not sure what I wanted to do. I was studying to maybe be a school teacher. And a friend of mine had gone through a program where he was able to go in after college as an officer of the Marines. I didn't know it was an option, nor I realized it was. And I was a pretty average student. I still wanted challenge in my life. I wanted some adventure, and that looked like a pretty good way to get it. So off I went. Yeah.
Well, it must be an adventure, but was it a good one or a bad one?
Yeah. Well, in my case, it was all good. I made 4 6-month deployments. I missed the birth of 2 kids. I was in a lot of combat units, but I never saw combat. I was just in during a time where there wasn't much fighting, and looking back on it, was really kind of protected and glad I didn't have to. And so got to do meet some great people, do some exciting things, travel the world, and was able to do that without getting shot at. So it's not bad.
Were you stationed all over the world? Because I heard you can actually choose, right?
Yeah, so I was stationed mostly on the East Coast of the U.S. And North Carolina was the main Marine base, but we deployed to the Mediterranean. Made 4 deployments to the Mediterranean. So was around the Middle East, around Southern Europe, those kind of places.
I see. So after being in the Marine for 12 years, how did you get into consultancy? Because I don't think it's because I think you went to EY, right? But I don't think these big 4 consultancies accept.
So it was a path to get there. I was up for promotion to major, and I got passed over for promotion. When that happens, you can stick around a year and try again. But I just really felt that was kind of a leading to get out. But I'm pretty good at strategy and putting pieces together. And Ernst & Young at the time was starting a new outsourcing practice, and they were looking for a handful of individuals to join directly as partners to start this new global practice. And I was fortunate enough to be one of those. So that got me into consulting, and then from there I discovered kind of a niche around collaborative work and around collaborative strategy that I just really fell in love with, and eventually then started my own company just to focus on that type of consulting.
Right, right. So, what are the challenges you would say transitioning out, of a Marine?
Yeah, any transition is always a challenge of trying to figure out. I think there are two big challenges. The first, and they kind of go hand in hand. The first one is deciding what uh, um, what you've got with the skills, the things you've done, are they applicable in your new role and where you're going? Is that going to be of value? And are there things that you did or habits you had that you need to drop behind? Right, that's one decision you need to make. The second part then is to say every new thing you try, there's going to be a dip.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? And you've got to be ready for it. And you have to, in fact, embrace it. If you don't have some dip in performance, you're not going to grow to another level. And so you have to just be ready to not be, typically you're almost at the top of your game, and then you start something new. And it's a little scary to not be at the top of your game anymore, because you're trying to, like when I started my own company, it was very different than working for a big firm. So I think those two things, if you can weather that, you can, keep moving.
So Tom, so you were talking about, how you completed your Marine training and transitioned out to the corporate world. Could you talk us through, some of the difficulties you faced and your, career trajectory after being out of the Marine?
Yeah, so a couple of things happened, throughout my life. I mean, the Marines was a getting out. I was passed over for promotion, so it was not my choice. Well, it sort of was. I could have stayed in and tried, and I decided no, it was really time to move on and do something else. So I was confronted with something I wasn't expecting. I thought I'd do a whole career like my dad had done in the Air Force. But as I got out, I was able to. I got hired by EDS, which is a large IT outsourcing company, and I was working on $100 million outsourcing deals, really large outsourcing deals. Quickly realized I was not a deal guy. I just don't really think that way, and so that was that was a time in my life where I didn't feel I didn't feel the work was meaningful. I didn't feel fully alive. I felt kind of like I was going through the motions. But what I discovered is I might not have been really good at deals, but I was pretty good at strategy and putting things together. And then that led to the next step in the career when Ernst & Young was looking to start a new practice, and that fit my skills better.
Right, I see. I've got, some corporate friends as well who do struggle a lot, or they tell me stories about their colleagues struggling a lot, despite being, in a really prestigious company. What advice would you have for people who might be at a really stable job at a good company but isn't finding any meaning in what they do?
Well, it's so jumping ahead a little bit, but I think it fits here. At the Halftime Institute, we help people really kind of find and live out their calling.
Right.
And what we would say is that you need to get clear, get free, and get going. And so the first thing is about getting clear on who you are, what your strengths are, how you like to work, what your passions are, your gifts, your abilities. When you get clear on what you feel you were made to do, then you can get free from things holding you back, and then you can get going. So if you're at a big job, the question is, does it really fit who you are?
Right.
And if it doesn't, then you're probably never going to be happy. But can you find meaningful activity maybe outside of work? In that case, right? You need the job, you're able to stay there, but you're able to work your schedule enough that you can find something meaningful outside. Or if you're fortunate enough, you're able to find a job that will maybe it didn't have the title and the prestige you wanted, but it'll still give you the lifestyle you want, but allow you to do something that really fits who you are and is more meaningful for you. So it's
Mm,
always a bit of a balance, and it's not necessarily an either or thing. You
mm,
know, there are a million different ways that you can have a job and then have a passion, or you don't have to like quit corporate world
right.
and work for nothing in a nonprofit, right? There's a
Yeah.
lot of ways to be able to do both, but I think that's if you don't know who you are, though, then you can find yourself just being drawn from one opportunity to another.
Mm,
And think, maybe if this one has a bigger title or a bigger paycheck, that'll make up for how miserable I feel, and it almost never does.
right, right. I think, a lot of people, they do think about, their meaning of work and life, on a frequent basis. But when
Mhm.
you ask them to make a change, then most of the time they stay in the comfort zone. So, you know, um, perhaps you can talk a little bit about, the
Yeah.
Time Institute, or, your own ways of, approaching a situation where somebody has to make a big decision in their lives. How would you go about it?
So a couple of things. Again, sometimes it can be a hard conversation to really take a look at yourself. You
Hmm.
know, what do you feel is important? What do you feel you were made for? You
Yeah,
know, if
yeah,
if you had a purpose, what would that be? Those kind of things. So if it's sometimes it's scary to ask yourself that question, because once you ask it, Bob Buford, who was the founder of Halftime, said, there was a French poet, I don't remember his name, but he said, when you discover your destiny, if you
mm.
don't do anything about it, it will follow you like an accusing shadow.
Right.
And
That's
so
oh,
so the first thing is, are you willing to kind of confront that and say, I met a guy one time, um,
right.
and he had just been laid off. He was older, in his 50s, had been laid off from an engineering firm. And he said, he said, I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but I'm kind of glad to be free. I never wanted to be an engineer. And I was like, well, gosh, you've been one 15 years. Well, why? And he said, well, my dad was an engineer.
That's what the worst
Oh,
answer you can get.
instead of thinking, who he was, what he wanted, he was just going down that path. So the first thing you need to do is be willing to ask yourself the question, and
Yeah.
then once, and it's usually not a loud, direct answer. I know I was going to do this. It's usually more of an iterative process.
Mm,
Right? Like at halftime, if somebody came to me and said, I'm thinking about, I got something on my heart for orphans in Africa.
yeah.
Well, as they start to explore it, you realize, is it orphans or is it Africa? Is
Mm,
it orphans or is it the poor? Is
right.
it the poor or is it the hungry? Is
Mm,
it, and as you explore, if you're open, I just think, things get revealed to you that let you focus in on, oh, this really touches my heart.
yeah.
And then once you kind of have a way of doing that, are there things we talked about doing a low cost probe,
Right.
right? Are there little things you can try that
Mm,
will both help you refine your thinking and see if there's a possible platform or way for you to live out that passion
yeah.
before you take the big jump with what you're doing? So it's
Right.
it's a process, right? And it's one you can take intentionally, but it
Mm,
takes a little effort to do it. It takes a little self-reflection, and then it takes a little effort.
mm. Well, just a bit of sharing from myself. I do usually try and I tend to take 15 to 20 minutes every day in my life,
Mhm.
just to think about, my meaning, what my career trajectory is going, how can I help people through my role. And based on personal experience, it can be quite difficult to sometimes take the time
Yes,
out, not
yes.
think about anything, and just focus, on your greater, purpose in life. Did you try and do the same thing before?
Yeah, so one of the things I in back when I was in high school, I started sort of spiritually searching. And that's always been a big part of my life. And so as I ran into adulthood, faith became an important thing to me.
Right.
And so kind of a daily time of reflection or meditation to say, not just who am I and not just what was I made for, but what is it I'm called to do today
Right.
now, right? Make these sort of divine opportunities, right? I think it was John Lennon or something that said life happens while you're planning what to do next.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and when you think about career paths and you think about your job and you think about making your quotas or making the monthly numbers or whatever it is, you get on such a treadmill with that
Mm.
that if you're not intentional enough to take some time to step back from the noise of the day and think of, wow, not daydream about what I could do, but think
Mm.
about what would a meaningful life be like. And
Yeah.
if you're not even considering that, then it's very hard to think about what you might do that would be meaningful, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, taking time out is definitely really important, I think.
we have a one of the programs we have. There's a 2-day gathering where we bring people into a city where there've been a number of halftime people that have started different ministries, nonprofits,
Yeah.
businesses, and they get to see all of them. And the people that are in that program are typically very busy business executives, and they've blocked out the day and a half to come see what's going on in the city.
Yeah.
And we asked them, would you like to come in the day before for an optional silent retreat for a day?
Right. Right.
And almost every time these executives, business owners, senior officials, every one of them jump on the ability to have a day of silent retreat.
Right. Right.
Because they just don't get that. It's hard to do it themselves. But if we say, if you'll come in, we're going to give you a day just to reflect and think, it becomes one of the most valuable things they do often.
Wow. Okay. So actually, most of them say yes when you ask
Yes,
them to do a retreat.
the vast majority do.
Okay,
It was really a surprise to us,
yeah. Yeah.
but it really is it's again, there's such a frantic pace, and and when you're not at work, which you can carry 24/7, carry home with you, do all those kind of things, you're continually bombarded with information, right? You can just stay at a surface level of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And not step back to go, wow, what's really important to me?
Mhm.
If the halftime, Bob Buford wrote the book 25 years ago, and his personal journey is he was very successful. He said, I've been successful, I want to be significant.
Mm.
And what we'd say now is, at halftime in the sports vernacular, the way we'd say it is halftime isn't, it should be a time in your life when you can just take a pause
Yeah.
and say, if I keep doing what I'm doing, am I going to end up where I want to be?
Mm. Mm. That's powerful.
And, you ask yourself that question, you first have to decide, well, where do I want to be?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you can start to see, okay, is this going to get me there? And again, a discussion, we have a tool we call a roadmap, which is kind of like a life plan that guides, and two of the boxes you fill out.
Yeah.
One is, what is your personal mission statement? What do you feel like you were made to do?
Yeah.
And the other is, what is your personal being statement? Who do you want to become?
Mm.
And if you spend some time thinking about those two things, it becomes a powerful motivator, right? I mean, if you just, if you right now took out a small card and you wrote on there, my mission is to do this, and you
Yeah.
stuck it on your screen, you'd look at it every day and you'd think, is that really what my mission is? And if it isn't, how do I change it? And now the process has begun, right?
Right. So,
And then if that's what I want to do, then you can do the same thing with, who do I want to be?
mm.
And you start to think about that, and writing it down and thinking about it and growing over time, that's what gives you a peace and I think a joy in life that it runs over any particular job or accomplishment or those kind of things.
So based on your experience in these retreats, what are the most significant changes you see in the CEOs or executives who participate in them?
They're all over the map. Some it becomes a very spiritual journey. They find themselves in a place that either they had not been before, or maybe they were when they were young and they've reconnected with that. For others, it's a time of clarity. I can
Yeah.
think of one woman who was a very successful executive, and just realized for her it was time to move on.
Wow. Okay.
Where another one had a real kind of an inspiration. He's a real estate developer, and he realized there was a lot of good he could do
Mm,
through his real estate company.
right.
So for example, he buys these hotels. He's in Nashville, or he buys these old churches. Actually, he's turned them into hotels.
Right.
Every night somebody stays there, pays for a homeless person to have a night in a shelter.
Wow. Okay.
So see, he used all his real estate skills, his platform he already had, to have make a significance in his, a significant impact in his city,
Mm,
versus somebody who say left and went to a nonprofit and started to do something else. So
right. Right.
the other thing, I guess the other thing that happens in almost everyone is they begin to reflect on the relationships in their life,
Mm,
beyond what they have, beyond what they've done. What are the relationships that are important to them, and
yeah.
how are they really trying to steward them or protect them? Right? I mean,
Mm, yeah.
usually you're busy. You've got all these protections. You've got insurance for this, and you've got
Yeah.
you've got savings accounts for that, and you've got everything. But are you as intentional with a relationship of saying, this really is a big deal, this really is important, and a lot of very successful people,
Mm,
myself included, have put family and relationships on the side to go achieve whatever it was I was driving to achieve.
mm.
I think that kind of universally that hits most people.
Well, can you share your personal experience of, put how negative it was towards your life and other people's lives when you put yourself in the center and your families and relationships aside?
Yeah, it's a great, when I was in the Marines, and this is a pattern I picked up from my dad, the sort of mission comes first, right? And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I had to deploy. I missed the birth of two kids while I was deployed. My wife, I've had a great wife. We've been married, next month we'll be married 46 years.
Wow, congrats, congrats.
Thanks. She stood by me a long time. Um, but that kind of mission comes first. You kind of understood it when you were in the military, but I get
Yeah.
out and get into business, and I took that same idea, right? The business comes first.
Yeah.
So like we'd go on vacation, and she would drive with the family down to the beach, and I would always stay for some meeting and then fly down and meet them,
Mm,
because I had something else I was doing, or you're um it fortunately, or and I will give my wife all the credit for this. Our family has been strong and stayed together, and she supported me, and the kids, they don't feel like I neglected them, and that was really because she was so strong with it. But there's
mhm.
also been a lot of time when I was there, but I really wasn't there.
Right, right.
I'm on vacation, but I'm on my laptop for a few hours a day.
That's sad.
It is sad,
That's
and
sad.
it doesn't. It sometimes it's not the big blow up thing. It just,
Yeah.
you look back and realize you've missed a lot of little things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think that's it's a challenge. Anybody um, is driven, and to
Yeah.
be driven for all the right reasons, is going to face those kind of challenges. So.
So, how did you come to the realization that you had to do something about this and, fix the problems you had?
I would honestly say I keep coming to it, right?
Right.
So now I'm running a nonprofit, but I can run off and be just as busy. And
Yeah.
for example, one thing, a little story with my wife. On the roadmap, we have these columns of things that you want to focus on, areas of action for the year.
Hmm.
Last year, I had a column that was my wife and our family.
Right. Right.
This year, my wife has her own column,
Okay.
just about what I want to do with her. And I said, okay, I asked her what she wanted this year. What's her kind of dream for the year? And she knows what it is to be a mom. She knows what it is to be a grandmom. She's rediscovering who she is.
Right.
And so I said, okay, I'd like to help you with that. And I started listing things we can do, like, make sure every once a quarter that we get away somewhere and we do all this. And
Yeah.
I thought I had a pretty good list of things to do, you
Right.
know. And
Right.
then she said, what ought to be at the top of the list is I just need when you're with me for you to be with me.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I was like, wow. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I'm like, once again,
Mm.
because that's the tendency, it's the pull, you
Yeah.
know, of
Yeah.
a passion or an excitement, even for good things, you can get
Yeah.
really off into that. And you just, hopefully you have we all the programs we do are, for example, cohort based, because you need a group of friends around you that can say, need to pull you back a little bit, need to be able to say, what, look at what you're doing here, really, you
Right.
know. And with that kind of help, it just, there's one more time I'll go back and try to, recalibrate a little bit.
So it's basically like a constant struggle
It,
between multiple inner selves, I
it,
guess.
it is, it is, and and there's nothing wrong with the struggle. I heard somebody say one time, somebody said, well, life isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. And
Yeah.
this other guy said, no, actually, it's just a whole bunch of sprints. Right?
Yeah.
There are times in your life when you're just going to be, you got to be at it.
Yeah.
But can you intentionally create rhythms that
Mm.
will last you for the long run, that won't burn you out because you ran too hard too fast, or won't ruin relationships because you weren't able to be around for them? Can you establish a rhythm that's allows you to do what you want to do and feel called to do, but do it in a healthy enough way that it's sustainable for you and those that you love?
Would you say you found the key to that already, the rhythm that you're
Okay.
looking for?
I would say it's probably ought to ask my wife, but
Yeah.
I would say we're in a pretty good spot with that.
Right.
One of the reasons for that, and this is, uh, I have tried intentionally the last few years to really kind of work on my own ego,
Right.
to want to be able to do things for the right reason, not just because I want them for me.
Right. Right.
Halftime actually asked me to come work with them about 10 years ago. And had I done it, I would have failed miserably because there was still too much of me in it.
Mm.
I
Mm.
would have wanted to be the person in charge or the guy on the stage or whatever it was. And now, actually running halftime, there are two of us. We're co-CEOs.
Right.
And it's a great, neither of us were looking for the job, neither of us were, but we felt called to take it and do it. And it's just
Yeah.
a great relationship, and we try to keep ourselves out of it.
Mm.
And if
Mm.
you can, so in doing that, I think I found a better balance.
Right.
Still have to work on, but I think I'm
We're getting there.
better. That's right.
So,
And again, I'm still very driven to do things. I still want to accomplish stuff, right? One of my perfect life metrics on how I like my life is to have contentment with impact,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I don't want to just quit and play golf and retire, but I don't want to be driven, 120 hours a week either. So where's that balance?
Right. Well, I think we're all searching for this balance,
Yeah.
and it's a very difficult task to do. But lastly, just before we end, for our audience who might be, struggling to find meaning in
Mhm.
life, might be struggling in their current work, what would be your advice, and what should be the next step, you think?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say the advice is, one, it's a worthy struggle.
Worthy.
It's very easy to stop the struggle, to just say either it's not going to get any better than this, or I'm just going to go with the flow and
Yeah.
make money and party with people and not care about long-term stuff, or whatever it is. I'm just going to do what everything around me says I should do.
Right.
That you lose yourself in that, right?
Mm. Mm.
Become just this, whatever anything else is doing. So one, it's a worthy struggle. And then
Right.
two, back to the get clear, get free, get going. Start with looking at yourself.
Mm.
If you just try to get free of things, you never reach it, right? Like, oh, if I just get this raise, or if I just move to this city, or if I just do it, and it never comes. if you try to get going, you just change one treadmill for another.
Yeah.
If you really get clear on who you are, then what starts to happen is you find things that you just can't not do.
Yeah.
You know, I've got to be about that. I've got to make time for this. I've got to, and then that's where the meaning begins, whether it's through the work you're doing or in addition to the work you're doing.
Well, thanks so much, Tom, for the interview today. I think that's all the time we've got, but I'd be excited to, invite you to come up at another time and, wish you all the best.
Thanks. I'd love to. I appreciate the time. Would love to come anytime.